The fake heir of the family got drunk, harassed a pregnant woman, and caused her death. His fiancée, Sarah, knelt and begged me to take the fall for him. Ethan saved my life, and I have to repay him, she pleaded. You love me so much. Please, just endure this for my sake. When you get out, we'll get married. I nodded and agreed. But her lawyer gave up my appeal, turning what should have been a few weeks in jail into 5 long years. I tried to appeal and retract my confession, but the other inmates tortured and beat me for it. We got a message from the outside. They sneered. Someone wants us to give you special attention. This is the price you pay for dreaming. You could have the queen of Chicago's high society. I was beaten until I was curled into a ball, vomiting blood. Before I blacked out, my eyes were glued to the news on the TV. It was the engagement of the century. My fiancée, Sarah, and the fake heir, Ethan. I completely lost all hope. After 5 agonizing years in prison, I was finally free. I was at Union Station, ready to leave that city of painful memories, when Sarah's bodyguards blocked my path. Mr. Hayes, one of them said, Ms. Thompson has been waiting for you. The city outside the car window felt alien. I was in a daze. 5 years really can change so much. On a massive digital billboard on a nearby skyscraper, a news headline caught my eye. Chicago socialite Sarah Thompson buys 9-figure painting at auction to impress new beau. The thrilled boyfriend was seen embracing her as they entered a hotel, not emerging until the next morning. A 9-figure painting? How many zeros is that, anyway? I fiddled with the cheap plastic ring on my finger and gave a bitter smile. It was something Sarah had bought for me on a whim from a street vendor years ago. I pulled it off and tossed it out the window without a second thought. The car entered a gated community in Lincoln Park and pulled up to a mansion. The bodyguard handed me a phone. A voice that was both familiar and strange came through the speaker. It was Sarah. Daniel, I'll be back in a little while. Just make yourself at home. If you need anything, just ask the security staff. My reaction was slow. I looked away for a long moment before nodding. Okay, I finally replied. The line went quiet. The silence was awkward. 5 years is enough to change a person. I was no longer the cheerful, energetic guy I used to be. I used to get so excited whenever Sarah called. We could talk for hours. Now, there was nothing but silence between us. The call ended, and the bodyguard led me into the mansion. As I walked through the house, the staff's eyes followed me, their hushed whispers trailing behind. Ms. Thompson has always had a thing for good-looking men. Why would she bring home someone so plain? He's almost unattractive. Didn't you hear? I overheard he just got out of prison today. No idea what he did. Maybe she's trying something new, but this is a bit extreme. All her other guys, the actors, the models, the heirs, they were all handsome and talented. They watched me walk away with disdain, shaking their heads at Sarah's apparent new taste in men. I wasn't offended. I just sat on the couch, glancing at the clock every so often. I had been waiting for 9 hours. I had no idea how much longer Sarah's little while was going to be. I was starving. The staff had brought me a glass of ice water, but I was afraid to drink it. I was both hungry and parched. A sharp pain cramped my stomach. I looked up at the bodyguard and asked when Sarah was coming back. He shot me a single, contemptuous glance. It was as if I were some piece of trash that didn't belong. It's Mr. Miller's birthday, he said coldly. Miss Thompson booked out the entire Aura nightclub for him. She doesn't have time for irrelevant people. Ethan Miller. The name sent a dull ache through my head. 8 years ago, I was reunited with my biological parents, only to discover they had already raised a replacement son, Ethan Miller. We never got along. My parents, feeling guilty towards me, had to move out. Then, 5 years ago, he got drunk, harassed a pregnant woman on the street, and she fell and died. I took the fall for him. I went to prison. The family and affection I had just found were gone in an instant. I was back in the shadows, a target for anyone and everyone. But he was still the untouchable Ethan Miller, the spoiled rich boy, sheltered from all hardship in the palm of Sarah's hand. I felt nothing. Not long after I came home, my biological parents' company went bankrupt, and then they died in a car crash. Everyone started calling me a curse, a bad omen. Everywhere I went, I was met with scorn. There was nothing left in the world that could hurt me, except for the 3 promises Sarah had made to me. First, that she would marry me. Second, that she would buy up all the shares of Hayes Industries and help me rebuild it. And third, that she would get back my mother's heirloom, an imperial jade pendant. I didn't want to marry Sarah anymore. In 5 years, Sarah never kept her promise about Hayes Industries. The company had been sold and rebranded long ago. I didn't blame her for that. I just wanted the pendant back. The pain in my stomach intensified until my vision started to blur. I stumbled towards the kitchen. I pulled some food from the fridge, trying to make something to eat, but a member of the staff snatched it out of my hands. "You're a guest here," she snapped. "Have you no manners? You can't just help yourself to the family's things. This food was prepared specifically for Mr. Miller. It's not for outsiders to touch. Please try to remember your place as a guest." She gave a cold, dismissive snort and walked away. I waited for another 2 hours. She still wasn't back. My body swayed, and then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a bed, and a doctor was giving someone quiet instructions. Nearby, Sarah was shaking with rage. "What do I pay you all for?" She seethed at the staff. "To stand around and do nothing? You let him starve to this point. If anything like this happens again, you're all fired." Ethan walked in and put a calming hand on her arm. "Sarah, don't work yourself up. It's not worth getting upset over the help." He took Sarah's hand and led her out of the room. The staff looked pale and shaken. "I haven't seen Ms. Thompson that angry in years," one whispered. "It's his fault for playing the victim. He's just her new toy. Give it a month, she'll get bored and kick him out. I can't wait to watch that happen." The staff shot me a dirty look before hurrying out. I pulled the 4 from my arm and walked out of the room. In the hallway, another wealthy-looking young woman approached. She must have been one of Sarah's friends. She didn't recognize me and gave Sarah a puzzled look. "Who's this? Why is he coming out of your bedroom?" Sarah looked at me, her eyes meeting mine. The smile vanished from her face, replaced by a look of profound confusion. 5 years hadn't changed her much. She was still as beautiful and elegant as ever. I, on the other hand, looked exhausted, my shoulders slumped, my whole posture timid and beaten down. Ethan let out a loud laugh and sauntered over. He shot me a disdainful look, then explained to the woman, "Chloe, this is Sarah's distant cousin. He just came into town from the middle of nowhere." Sarah stood by, silently going along with the lie. I understood. A person like me would only be an embarrassment to her in front of her friends. Our parents had arranged our engagement before they died. With them gone and 5 years past, the agreement was meaningless now. How could I ever be worthy of Chicago's princess? An awkward silence fell over us until the butler announced that dinner was served. Once we were seated, the table was filled with lively conversation about art, business deals, and international auctions. It was a world away from mine. I didn't understand any of it, so I just kept my head down and ate. Then Chloe suddenly put down her fork. "Sarah," she said with a laugh, "I just remembered, isn't that ex-fiancé of yours getting out of prison soon? You'd better watch out. Guys like that can get clingy. Just give him some money to make him go away. It's not like you ever really cared about him." The cheerful chatter at the table died instantly. No one said a word. Ethan's mocking gaze flickered over to me for a split second before he looked away, pretending nothing had happened. Sarah's face was an unreadable, icy mask, but I knew she was furious. The tension was thick. Chloe looked like she wanted to say something else. But one look at Sarah's face told her she'd crossed a line, and she fell silent. Seeing my chance, I let out a soft chuckle, my voice calm as if I were discussing a stranger. "Don't worry, Miss Vance," I said. "He won't." Chloe's interest was immediately piqued. She leaned in close, eager to know more. "Why not?" I swallowed my food, preparing to calmly explain. But just then, Sarah cut in, her tone sharp. "Let's just eat, shall we?" Her eyes swept over me, her beautiful face a mixture of emotions I couldn't begin to understand. I just shrugged, feigning indifference, and went back to my meal. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room, chatting and laughing as they walked down the hall. Chloe's eyes landed on the grand piano in the corner. "Wow," she exclaimed, "that's a custom Steinway. Those are impossible to get. Who did you buy it for, Sarah?" She glanced pointedly at Ethan, playing along. Ethan stood up, sat at the piano, and began to play, his fingers moving gracefully across the keys. As the last note faded, he rose slowly. Seeing the admiration in Sarah's eyes, a look of triumph crossed his face. "I've only been playing for a little while, so I'm probably not very good," he said with false modesty. "My instructor says I have a natural talent, even better than some of his conservatory students, but I think I still have a long way to go." He shot a challenging look in my direction. His words were meant for me. My adoptive parents didn't have much money, but when they found out I loved music, they spent every last penny of their savings on my lessons. Piano, guitar, violin, you name it, I could play it, but the piano was where I truly excelled. By the time I was 18, I had already performed at Carnegie Hall and been praised by the great masters. When I returned to my biological family, My parents shower me with praise, which made Ethan intensely jealous. He could never measure up. In the 5 years I was in prison, he must have been obsessed with finally surpassing me. He was constantly improving, while I hadn't touched a piano in 5 years. Ethan seemed to realize this too, because a grin spread across his face. Daniel, you've been playing since you were a kid. Why don't you play something for us? Don't worry, he added. We won't laugh if you're a little rusty. Sarah looked annoyed and took a step forward as if to stop me. I moved past her and sat down at the bench. The moment my fingers touched the ivory keys, I felt a spark of my old self return. My fingers flew across the keyboard, and a powerful, passionate melody filled the room, stunning everyone. The difference between my performance and Ethan's was obvious to everyone. I was in a completely different league. Sarah and Chloe were completely captivated. Long after the final note faded, they sat in stunned silence before breaking into thunderous applause, their eyes shining with admiration. Ethan's face was a dark cloud. He glared at me and let out an angry huff. Chloe looked at me, her face alight with surprise and unconcealed admiration. I can't believe I'd run into a prodigy here tonight. I'm a huge piano enthusiast, and I have a deep appreciation for talent like yours. I just acquired an extremely rare Fazioli concert grand, and it's just waiting for a master to play it. Would you like to come see it sometime? I shook my head, about to decline her offer. But Sarah cut in, her voice tight with annoyance. He's my guest, Chloe. I'm afraid that won't be possible. It's getting late. I'll have Ethan drive you home. Chloe gave me one last, long look and sighed with regret. Ethan clearly didn't want to go, but he didn't dare cross Sarah, so he left, grumbling under his breath. Even as the door closed behind them, he was probably hoping she'd call him back. Soon, it was just the two of us in the living room. I felt uneasy under her intense gaze. A draft made me shiver, and I instinctively shifted away, not wanting to see the look on her face. But Sarah suddenly grabbed my wrist, her grip like a vice. A scornful smile played on her lips. Daniel, it's been a few years. You're barely out, and you're already hitting on other women. I really underestimated you. That desperate to prove you still got it. My expression remained calm. I felt nothing inside. What charm was she talking about? I was gaunt and timid. A man who looked like a strong breeze could knock him over. The easy smile I once had was gone, replaced by a dead, empty expression. My silence seemed to throw her off. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it, a strange look on her face. I used to love teasing her, always having to get the last word in our playful arguments. Now, my face was a blank slate. Her words couldn't touch me. A flicker of pain crossed her face. Her tone softened. I didn't mean that. Our engagement is still on, she said. I'm still going to marry you. You don't have to worry about that. It's what I promised. She paused, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. But what did you mean earlier, when you said he won't? She stared at my face, scrutinizing my every expression. I turned to look her in the eye. Where is my mother's pendant? Sarah froze, her eyes darting away from mine. A knot of dread formed in my stomach. I'm asking you a question, I pressed. Where is it? She took a step back, flustered, and explained impatiently. Ethan liked it, so I let him borrow it for a while. I'll call him right now and have him bring it back. My mind was reeling. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Sarah quickly made the call and walked back towards me, a small smile on her face as if to reassure me. Then her eyes fell on my hand. Where's the ring I gave you? Gone. A flash of anger crossed her face. Her fists clenched and unclenched at her sides. Seeing my completely placid expression, she seemed to deflate with a sense of helplessness. After what felt like an eternity, Ethan finally rushed in. He was out of breath, and his face was red from exertion. Sarah rushed to his side, her face a mask of concern and annoyance. You didn't have to rush, she said, steadying him. Ethan shot me a look and sighed dramatically. I was worried Daniel would be angry, he said. I didn't want him to blame you. Sarah looked utterly charmed, gently stroking his cheek as if deeply touched. Ethan gave her a grateful smile before slowly walking over to me. Don't be mad at Sarah, he said, playing the martyr. I beg her for it. She really treasures your things. So please don't let this come between you two. If you have to be angry at someone, be angry at me. This was his classic move, driving a wedge between us and making me look like the unreasonable one. Meanwhile, he looked like the devoted one who only had eyes for Sarah. I had no patience for his performance. I held out my hand. Just give it back. He nodded and held out a small, silk-wrapped bundle. A feeling of dread washed over me as I reached for it with both hands. But just before my fingers could touch the silk, he let it drop. My eyes widened in horror. I lunged for it, but I was too late. It hit the marble floor with a sickening crack. The silk cloth fell away, revealing the jade pendant, now shattered into a dozen pieces. Ethan immediately bowed an apology, but as he leaned in, he whispered mockingly, "If I can't have it," he sneered, "then neither can you." He shot me a triumphant look, a smirk playing on his lips. A wave of pure hatred washed over me, and without a second thought, I shoved him with all my might. Ethan stumbled backward and fell hard to the floor, immediately putting on a look of remorse. "Daniel, please don't be mad. I didn't mean to. Please forgive me." He knelt and began to gather the broken pieces, and when no one was looking, he shot me a look of pure, triumphant defiance. I couldn't take it anymore. I was shaking with rage. I strode forward and shoved him away from the pieces. The next second, Sarah grabbed my arm, her face contorted with anger. "That's enough. Stop it." She glared at me, her expression a mixture of fury and disappointment. She opened her mouth to scold me, but then she saw my red-rimmed eyes and the tears I was fighting to hold back. Her voice softened. "Ethan didn't mean it. He feels terrible. Please, don't be so upset." She reached out and stroked my hair, but every word out of her mouth was a defense of Ethan. I ignored her and knelt to pick up the fragments, my hands shaking uncontrollably. A cold despair settled in my heart. It was the last thing my parents had given me, and now it was gone. I squeezed the sharp fragments in my fist, letting them cut into my palm. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony in my soul. Sarah saw what I was doing and cursed under her breath, rushing to stop me. She pried my fingers open and gasped when she saw the blood. She looked up, about to yell at me. But as she did, she saw me collapse, my body going limp as I fell to the side. I felt like I was waking from a long, exhausting dream, the weariness of it still clinging to me. I opened my eyes and took in the room. My stomach growled with hunger, and I struggled to my feet and headed out the door. As I passed the study, I heard voices inside and paused. I heard Ethan's voice, cautious and tentative. "Maybe I should go. Daniel will be furious when he wakes up." "This is my house." Sarah's voice was cold. "He doesn't make the rules here." She had made her decision, and her tone left no room for argument. Her blatant favoritism filled Ethan with a smug satisfaction, a joyful glint in his eyes. Then he brought up the past. "Sarah," he said, "I can't thank you enough for what you did. If you hadn't made up that story about me saving your life, he never would have taken a fall. I would have been the one in prison." Sarah let out a long sigh, a shadow of regret in her eyes. After a moment, she said, "I know I wronged him. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to him. I'll never let him be mistreated again." There was a subtle note of reluctance in her voice that Ethan picked up on immediately, and it filled him with satisfaction. He reached for her, pulling her into his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her, his lips moving against hers with growing abandon. Sarah's hands were on his shoulders at first, but soon they wrapped around his neck as she returned his kiss with equal passion. They were lost in each other, like two lovers. The sight of it made me sick to my stomach. I felt myself start to sway. It was Sarah who told me that Ethan had saved her life, that she owed him a debt she had to repay. That's why she begged me to take the fall, and I agreed. I spent 5 years in prison for it. To think that my sacrifice was all based on a lie. It was pathetic. The air in the study grew thick with their passion. Their eyes met, full of a deep, shared history. Ethan sighed, a hint of regret in his voice. But what if Daniel finds out? Sarah tensed for a moment, then shook her head, her expression hardening. He'll never find out. And even if he does, so what? What choice does he have? He can't escape me. In this world, he has no one but me. I'll never let him go. Ethan's face fell. That wasn't the answer he wanted to hear. "Sarah, you're a Thompson. You're at the top of Chicago society. If you stay with a guy like Daniel, you'll be a laughingstock. I'm worried about you. Maybe you should just..." Sarah cut him off before he could finish. "Stop. I don't want to hear it." Her eyes flashed a warning, and he fell silent. Not wanting to continue the conversation, Sarah stepped back, out of his arms. "It's getting late," she said, her voice flat. "I'm going to check on Daniel." I moved like a puppet, my limbs stiff, as I went back to the bed and lay down. Sarah came in, saw that I was asleep, called my name softly, and then left. Tears streamed down my face. I bit my lip to stifle the sound until the door clicked shut. Then I covered my face and wept. The next morning, when I woke up, A new jade pendant and a glass of honey water were on the nightstand. I've loved honey water since I was a kid. I was surprised Sarah still remembered. I gave the water a passing glance, then picked up the pendant and, without a moment's hesitation, took it to an auction house. The jade was rare and valuable. It sold easily for a 9-figure sum. With the money in my account, I went straight to the airport without a backward glance. I want to go to my adoptive parents. They were the only people in the world who truly cared about me. Lost in thought, I looked up and realized I was already at O'Hare. Just as I was about to board, my phone began to buzz incessantly. I saw it was Sarah calling and calmly declined the call. Ethan loved to set people up, didn't he? Well, I had arranged a little drama of my own for him. I hoped he would enjoy it. With a cold smile, I turned off my phone and got on the plane. Sarah stared at her phone, shocked that I had hung up on her. How dare I? She had imagined I would be thrilled with the new pendant and would come running back to her, overjoyed. She never expected this cold silence. A wave of anxiety washed over her. Sarah frowned, a deep sense of unease settling in. Just as her assistant walked in, Sarah abruptly stood up and strode out of the office. Ethan was just walking towards her, a smile on his face. She walked right past him, as if he were invisible, her pace quickening with every step. Ethan watched her go, his expression darkening, and he hurried to catch up. But Sarah ignored him completely, got into her car, and sped away. Ethan shouted after her, but it was no use. He was filled with resentment. He stomped his foot in frustration, a bitter sneer on his face. The car tore through the streets, getting her home in record time. Sarah ran from the car, straight to my room. The only thing left was the glass of honey water. She grabbed the arm of a housekeeper. "Where's Daniel?" she demanded. The startled woman stammered. "He left 3 hours ago, ma'am. We haven't seen him since." Sarah froze. "That long ago? What do I pay you for?" she raged. "I told you to keep me updated. Why didn't anyone tell me he left?" The housekeeper trembled, casting a nervous glance at Ethan, who had just arrived. Ethan, looking guilty, snapped at her. "What are you looking at me for?" He shot the housekeeper a warning look. The housekeeper felt a surge of indignation. It was Ethan who had told him not to bother Sarah with trivial matters, and now he was pretending to be clueless. Sarah's face grew darker. She was about to storm out when her eyes caught a piece of paper on the desk. She snatched it up, and her face went pale as she read it. "Ethan told me everything. The past 5 years, the story about saving your life, it was all a lie to protect him. I'm so disappointed in you. Since that's the case, Sarah, we're done. We have nothing to do with each other anymore." In that instant, Sarah felt like she'd been plunged into ice water. Her mind was a whirlwind of panic. Ethan had never seen her so undone. He rushed her side. When he saw what was written on the note, he froze. "This has nothing to do with me," he yelled. "I didn't tell him anything." He was frantic, trying to defend himself. "Sarah, I swear I didn't do it." "You didn't?" she said, her voice dripping with ice. "Do you really expect me to believe that?" Sarah gave a cold, humorless laugh, looking at him as if he were a stranger. "I've given you more than enough, Ethan. You shouldn't have been so greedy." There was a cold mockery in her eyes he had never seen before. A cold numbness spread through Ethan's body. For the first time in his life, he was truly afraid. He reached out and tugged on her sleeve, his eyes red and pleading. "I was more scared of Daniel finding out than anyone. What good would it do me to tell him?" Sarah violently shook him off, her laughter cold and sharp. "Weren't you trying to get rid of him so you could take his place?" She turned to the nervous-looking housekeeper. "Get out," she screamed at her. "All of you get out. You're fired." Then she turned and stormed out of the house. The staff exchanged looks, then glared at the humiliated Ethan. One of them shouted after Sarah's retreating figure, "Ma'am, it wasn't our fault. Mr. Miller told us not to bother you." Ethan's eyes widened in panic. "It has nothing to do with me," he hissed at them. "Shut your mouths." Sarah stopped in her tracks and turned, her eyes boring into him. She looked at him with genuine confusion. He already had so much. Why was he never satisfied? A headache was building behind her eyes. She fought back the urge to scream, grabbed Ethan by the wrist, and physically threw him out of the house. Ethan's face was ashen. He scrambled back towards her, unwilling to accept defeat. "Sarah, please, you have to believe me. I didn't do it." Ethan's heart burned with resentment. What was so special about Daniel? He was just a pathetic ex-con. He was plain, and Sarah herself had been disgusted by his appearance. So why was she so furious now? He had never known a day of hardship in his life, and he would not let Sarah abandon him now. "Sarah, believe me, I didn't do it." You just want to get married, right? I can marry you. Sarah laughed coldly. To me, you're just a friend I grew up with. Nothing more. But even she knew their relationship was far more complicated than that. They had grown up together, and their bond was deeper than most people could understand. Her own childhood had been difficult, and whenever she looked at Ethan, she saw a reflection of her younger self. She felt a need to protect the boy who had been her companion through those lonely years. But spend the rest of her life with him? That was out of the question. The man she wanted to marry had always only been Daniel. She wanted to possess him, to keep him locked away where he would belong only to her, see only her. Deep down, Sarah knew this was wrong, that it would hurt Daniel. But she didn't care. She wanted what she wanted, and she wanted to own Daniel completely and forever. Forcing him to depend on her, to be bound to her side for eternity. That was the only thing that would make her happy. She couldn't stand the fact that even after everything, Daniel still possessed an inner light, a nobility she couldn't tarnish. She wanted to drag that moon down into the mud with her. When Ethan got into trouble, that dark impulse grew stronger. She knew it was wrong, but she did it anyway. Sarah closed her eyes and ordered her security to remove Ethan from the property. She walked heavily back into the house, her eyes landing on the grand piano. A pang of regret hit her. She never got to tell Daniel. The piano was for him. Dazed, she went to her study, her eyes falling on a framed photo of the two of them together. An idea sparked in her mind, and she hurried to her safe. Inside was a thick file containing everything she had on Daniel's time in prison. She had never visited him, not once, but she knew everything that had happened to him in there. As Sarah looked through the files, a dark satisfaction grew within her. If only he could have stayed in prison forever, then he would always be under her control. Not like this. He had actually run away. But where could he possibly go? He had nowhere else. A surge of fury rose in her, and she slammed her fist down on the desk. The sharp pain cleared her head. She suddenly knew what to do. Sarah called her assistant. Give me the file on Daniel's adoptive parents. A moment later, she added urgently, send it to me now. She hung up and threw her phone against the wall. She stared out the window, her mind racing. After a series of buses and trains, I finally made it back to my adoptive parents' home in rural Wisconsin. The moment she saw me, my adoptive mother threw her arms around me. Daniel, are you okay? My adoptive father heard the commotion and came out, his face breaking into a wide smile when he saw me. Their eyes were filled with love and concern. Daniel, you must have gone through so much, my dad said, his voice thick with emotion. I shook my head and tried to sound casual. It wasn't so bad. They fed me well. My mom swatted me on the back. We're not blind, son. We can see how much weight you've lost. I just smiled and led them inside. My mom fussed over me constantly, cooking all my favorite meals, determined to put some weight back on me. My dad, meanwhile, was focused on getting my strength back, dragging me out for a run every morning. My days were simple, and I pushed everything that had happened out of my mind. 3 months flew by, and I started to feel more like myself again. I loved this new, quiet life. I even started running with the daughter of the town's mayor every morning. The shadows of the past began to fade. It was as if I was young again, as if the last 5 years had never happened. Then one morning, I felt a pair of eyes on me. I looked up and saw her. Sarah. She stood in the middle of the road in a stunning red dress, blocking my path. The mayor's daughter, Emily, jogged up beside me, a smile on her face. Daniel, you're slow today, she teased. My parents are waiting for us for breakfast. I nodded, then said with mock seriousness, I'm older than you. You should show some respect instead of just calling me by my name. Emily blushed and ducked her head, muttering a playful retort. I have enough brothers. Thank you very much. Don't try to pull one over on me. I laughed and was about to head off with her. Seeing that I was completely ignoring her, Sarah's face darkened and she strode towards us. She grabbed my wrist to pull me away, but Emily stepped in, only to be shoved aside. What do you think you're doing? Emily demanded. Sarah shot her a warning look, a cold sneer on her lips. Unfazed, Emily met her gaze and grabbed my other arm. I sighed and gently pulled them apart. Emily, you go on ahead. I'll catch up. Emily looked annoyed, but shot one last glare at Sarah. I'm a big boy. She can't hurt me. I reassured her. I'll come over as soon as we're done here. Emily's expression softened. She gave Sarah one last dirty look before turning to leave. I watched her go, relieved. Then I heard Sarah's cold, angry voice in my ear. You certainly work fast. It hasn't been that long, and you've already found a replacement. I ignored her sarcasm and just stared at her, waiting. We stood there in a silent standoff, and for the first time, Sarah was the one to break. She let out a long, pained sigh. She walked slowly towards me, her voice filled with desperation. Ethan was lying. Everything he said was a lie. Don't believe him. How could I have sent you to prison on purpose? It broke my heart. Her voice was hypnotic, almost making me want to believe her. But I had heard it with my own ears. How could it not be true? Even now, she refused to tell the truth. All I felt was disappointment. I wondered how many other lies she had told me over the years. A fresh wave of anger washed over me, and I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. But I heard you, with my own ears. You were too busy kissing him to even notice I was there. The composure on Sarah's face shattered. Her eyes were wide with a raw, primal panic. I was done with this. I turned to walk away. I heard her footsteps behind me, and then her arms were wrapped tightly around me from behind. I could feel her body shaking, but I felt nothing. Daniel, it was all my fault. I'm so sorry. I can make it up to you. Please, just forgive me. 5 years of hell. 5 years of beatings and humiliation. How could she possibly make that up to me? Besides, I would never believe a word she said again. I broke free from her grasp, turned, and slapped her hard across the face. She stumbled back, stunned, her hand flying to her cheek in disbelief. But she recovered quickly. A strange smile of relief spread across her face. So you know, good. Now I don't have to hide it anymore. I was so furious I could only laugh, and I slapped her again. You're unbelievable. Sarah just laughed, a cold, empty sound, and looked me straight in the eye. Say what you want. Hit me again. I don't care. She grabbed my hand and used it to slap her own face again and again. My hand stung, and I yanked it back, pushing her away. A joyful, triumphant look spread across her face. I knew it, she breathed. You still care. I laughed coldly. You're mistaken. My hand just hurts. The smile froze on her face, but her eyes softened, filling with a look of guilt and tenderness. Do you hate me? She asked softly. I let out a harsh laugh. Shouldn't I? One lie from you cost me 5 years of my life in a place where I was tortured every single day. Should I thank you for that? My voice rose with every word, and she had no answer. I met her eyes, a bitter, mocking smile on my face. Those 5 years in prison were the worst of my life. The beatings, the humiliation, it was constant. Even now, I wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in a cold sweat, reliving it all. You said the sentence would be short. I waited, but the months turned into years, and you never came. I was so scared, I would just lie there shaking, telling myself you would come for me. I waited for so long, my hopes slowly turning to despair. But you never came. They would hold me down, beat me, humiliate me, and I never cried. I just took it, but one day I broke. I screamed and cried like a lunatic, and they all just laughed at me, asking where my loving fiancé was. I looked at her, my eyes burning. From that day on, everyone in that prison knew just how pathetic I was. The poor fool abandoned by the woman he loved. Sarah's eyes were red. She couldn't meet my gaze. She struggled to find the words. I didn't abandon you. I never stopped thinking about you. I didn't just forget about you. I had people keeping tabs on you, telling me how you were doing. I paid people good money to make sure you were taken care of, to make sure no one hurt you. I knew everything that happened to you in there, the good days and the bad. Even though we were apart, my heart was always with you. I stared at her, completely stunned. Take care of me, I asked, my voice dangerously low. Is that what you call it? Having me beaten until I was covered in bruises? Having my food stolen so I would starve? Sarah's words died in her throat. What are you talking about? I gave a cold, harsh laugh, then rolled up my sleeves and lifted my shirt to show her the scars. My skin was a roadmap of faded bruises and puckered scars. Scratches, burns, cuts from makeshift knives, they were all there. Sarah stared, her face a mask of horror and disbelief. That's impossible, she whispered. I paid them. I paid them so much money to protect you. You were supposed to be safe. She grabbed my arm, her grip desperate, like a drowning woman clinging to a piece of driftwood. Tears streamed down her face. It must have been Ethan, she cried. He must have intercepted the money. I would never do this to you. I just shrugged, my face a blank mask. So what? Sarah stepped forward, her arms open as if to hug me. Daniel, please forgive me. I'll make it up to you, I swear. Her familiar scent filled the air around me. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I felt sick to my stomach. Stop pretending, Sarah. It's too late for that. You've always loved Ethan, haven't you? Go to him. Be with him. Just stay away from me and stop making me sick. With that, I turned and walked away. She stood there, pale and stunned, before snapping out of it and running after me. She grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. I made one mistake, she cried, her voice a mixture of anger and shame. Have you forgotten all the good times? Everything I did for you? When you were being bullied in high school, I was the one who saved you. Remember that time you wanted that specific cheesecake? I drove all over the city to find it for you. Doesn't any of that count? Can it make up for one little mistake? I looked at Sarah, my expression calm. Whatever lingering feelings I might have had for her were now completely gone. Don't make me hate you, Sarah. Just stay out of my life. I turned to leave, but as Sarah reached for me again, Emily stepped between us and pushed her back. She stood in front of me, shielding me. Stay away from Daniel, Emily warned. Leave him alone. I put a hand on her arm, tried to calm her down. It's okay, I said. She can't hurt me. Sarah's eyes locked onto my hand, on Emily's arm, and her face twisted with rage. Are you two sleeping together? She spat. We ignored her and turned to leave. But Sarah lunged at us from behind. She was like a wild animal, clawing and scratching at Emily. Emily was quick to react, and she didn't hold back in her defense. The two of them were soon wrestling on the ground. I sighed and stepped in to pull them apart. Emily was the mayor's pride and joy. I couldn't let her get hurt. I pulled her behind me and checked her for injuries. Luckily, it was just a few scratches. I breathed a sigh of relief. I pulled her aside and gave her a light, scolding tap on the arm. You need to calm down. Emily yelped in mock pain. I was just defending your honor, and this is the thanks I get? You're heartless. Her playful antics made me laugh. But the sound of my laughter made Sarah's face contort in a new wave of fury, and I instinctively pulled Emily behind me. She stood there, stunned for a moment, then wiped the tears from her face with a look of anguish. She was too proud to let anyone see her break. She took a deep breath, and her mask of cold arrogance slipped back into place. Daniel, are you sure you won't come back with me? This is your last chance. My resolve was firm. I was about to shake my head, but just then, Ethan appeared out of nowhere and grabbed her, holding her tight. Sarah, he's not worth it. I'll always be here for you. Let's just go home. He tried to drag her away. Her response was to slap him, hard, several times across the face. Get away from me, she snarled, her face livid. I know what you did. If I ever see you again, I'll make you regret it. Ethan stared at her, his hand on his stinging cheek, his eyes welling up with tears of disbelief and wounded pride. His eyes fell on me, and a new wave of hatred washed over him. He charged at me. You son of a bitch, he screamed. You think you can steal her from me? I'll kill you. He threw a punch, but before it could connect, Sarah grabbed his arm. She let out a cold snort and kicked him so hard he flew backward. Ethan, she said, her voice dangerously calm. I've told you before. As long as you don't cause trouble, the money I give you is more than enough to live comfortably. But Ethan could never accept that. It was never enough for him. He hadn't worked this hard for so long just to be bought off. He couldn't give up. He couldn't let his meal ticket walk away. I don't care about the money, he pleaded. I just want to be with you. Daniel doesn't love you anymore. Can't you see that? Get out. Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She kicked him away again, his words echoing in her mind, a sharp pain piercing her heart, making it hard to breathe. She knew he was right, but she couldn't accept it. Daniel didn't love her anymore. The thought was unbearable. She turned to look for me, but Emily and I were already gone. She started to run after us, but it was too late. She could only stand there, stomping her foot in frustration. Sarah didn't give up. She started sending me gifts every day. I accepted them all, but I never responded. She owed me that much, and more. Ethan tried to cause trouble for me a few times, but the townspeople always ran him off. Sarah took back everything she had ever given him. The cars, the watches, the mansion, the unlimited credit card, all of it. His lifestyle took a nosedive. He fell into a spiral of drinking and reckless driving. He hoped Sarah would see his pain and take pity on him, but he never got the chance. One night, drunk and raging by the side of a river, he lost his footing and fell in. He was lucky. He didn't die, but his condition wasn't much better than death. He was partially paralyzed, unable to move one side of his body, and had severe lung damage. He would weep in despair, drool running uncontrollably down his chin. He became a pathetic joke. When I heard the news, I didn't know how to feel. I found a new job, teaching piano to the local kids. My life was moving forward. What happened to other people had nothing to do with me anymore. My future was my own, and it was going to be bright.